Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 18 of Friday Night Rambles. We're racking up the numbers now. Big hello and welcome to a very impromptu episode. This was supposed to be our very last episode of the series. It's not. We've got two more after this. So we've got this week, next week, and our grand finale, which we're going to announce on Monday at 8 o'clock in the evening. So stand by for that fantastic announcement at 8 o'clock on Monday. Going to be absolutely incredible. I've spent a lot of time preparing, getting up to this moment. But today, it's the first of many things. We have got 4 people today, which is the most we've had. We've got a returning guest. And we've got 2 teams of father and sons. So let's get them on. So our first guest is our returning guest. It is, if I just change my screen, give me 2 seconds because I can't multitask at the same time. Damian Patton.
Hello.
Hello. You all right?
It's been 18 weeks since I was last on. That was almost before lockdown.
It was on. It was much more before that because we had 4 weeks off. Remember?
Oh yeah, you did 8, 19, 20. I was too long ago. I was the very first episode, wasn't I?
You were the dummy run.
The dummy. Well, get the dummies in. That's what it was. Me, Hayden Parker, Steve Walls. We were the dummy run. That's nice. That it's going well, though, isn't it? It's gone well. 18. Well.
Now you've brought someone along with you today, haven't you?
I do. Not in the house. Not in the house. They're the other side of the country. But we've got my dad on, Brian Patton. He's here. Here he
Hello.
There he
Good
is.
to see you. Good lad. Miles away.
He's in.
I'm nowhere near Weston-super-Mare. I'm more nearer London than Weston-super-Mare.
You're in Kent, aren't you? He's in Kent.
I am in Kent, yes.
But you're still telling him what to do. That's the main thing, Brian.
Well, no, he knows what to do. He's a good lad.
Oh, bless you.
He always used to listen to. I used to say, "Listen how other pros work," and he did. He always has done. He's been great.
Amazing.
Dead proud of him.
Oh, bless you. Well, we'll talk.
Making me blush. You're making me blush.
Yes.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more in a bit because we've got some other guests. We've got a rival family. They're not rivals in spirit, but today, for the purposes of today, they are the other family. So we have got the Simmons. So the Simmons and Simmons double act, which is Keith and Ben Simmons. Hello.
Yes. Hello. Hi. This is an emotional moment for us all, I feel. Definitely. All being on screen at the same time.
Yes, well, this is the most. We've got 5 people on the screen. This is weird. This is the most I've had. We're all socially distant, of course, in different parts of the country. So where are you?
We're near Brentwood in Essex.
Yeah.
And we would have happily been 2 meters away from each other, but we're having to be slightly closer for this.
Yeah, but he doesn't like being this close to me normally. I am a right-blooded comic, so that's...
Brilliant. Right, Damien and Brian, we're going to say goodbye to you for just a little bit, so do not go anywhere. But
something we said.
No, it's not. I just wanted to say hello to you because we've had Damien on before. We've had a little bit of Brian before when Damien's been talking about Brian. So I thought, let's start with you. So let's start with Keith because Keith, how many pantomimes have you done? Because it's quite a big number and quite an impressive number.
It is, yeah. Last year in Lytham St Anne's, I was appearing in my 50th pantomime, directing with Ben, but directing my 28th panto, and it was about the 120th I'd written, I think. So I'm a bit ensconced in pantomimes, I have to say.
Well, that is quite an impressive number now. Ben, do you reach that number any way, shape or form?
Well, I've worked out that was my 20th panto last Christmas, so it was quite nice. Dad doing his 50th the same year that I did my 20th, but Dad was 30 when I was born. I've worked out I've got to do panto every year and live as long as Dad.
Please don't tell anyone how old you are now, because we'll be able to work it out.
No, I'm only 12 now. I've just had a hard life.
Keith, I want to start with you. So tell me, how did you get into the biz of show?
Actually, the very first thing, because I started out with my brother as the Simmons brothers, and the very first thing we did professionally, amazingly, was make a record for Pi Records. Our recording manager was Tony Hatch, and playing guitar on the session was a man called Jimmy Page, who went on to form Led Zeppelin. And we had this record come out on Pi Records. It failed dismally. It was on Jukebox Jury, I remember, and Trini Lopez and Lulu voted it a hit, and a guy called Maurice Kin and the actress Julia Foster voted it a miss, and they were right. It was a So we struggled around as a vocal act for a few years, and did our very first pantomime in 1968. That was 1966 we released the record, but in 68 we did our first pantomime, Alan and I, and we were the Singing Villagers in Puss in Boots at the Theatre Royal in Bath, and that started the pantomime career. But we always did summer seasons, like Brian and Jimmy, the Patton brothers, the same sort of thing, doing pantomimes and summer seasons and cabarets and things in between. But back then, I mean, a summer season would be 20 weeks at least, and a pantomime would be 12 weeks. So that was the majority of the year taken care of, you know.
And you did Bath for quite a few years after that.
Did what? Sorry.
Oh, you did Bath Theatre Royal after that for a couple of years doing panto, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. We did. How did we?
Yeah, four of the first five.
Yeah, four in Theatre Royal Bath and one at the theatre in Swansea. So our first five pantomimes, it was four in Bath, one in Swansea, and then we started going all over the place. And then when my brother Alan decided to pack up doing the double act, he obviously had more sense than I did. I struggled around for 3 years on my own. I did 3 pantomimes on my own with John. One was with John Nettles, one was with Tim Healy from
in Newcastle.
That's right. And then the other one was with Paul Nicholas at down in Southampton.
Yeah.
And the marvellous Geoffrey Hughes, who was a great guy. Geoffrey Hughes, who was Eddie Yates in Coronation Street for many years. But and then Ben, suddenly I decided to ask him if he'd join me in a double act, and Simmons and Simmons were born.
It took us ages to decide on that name, and been great ever since.
Yeah. So we've done together now how many?
15 together.
15 together.
Yeah.
So what was that conversation like for you, Ben, then? So when your dad came to you saying, I want you to be part of the double act with me, what was that like?
It was a strange experience. It was a very positive experience. I was thrilled. I think what was interesting, Dad said he did 3 pantomimes on his own, and what the producers wanted was the old Simmons brothers material and routines in the show still, but obviously he didn't have a brother to work with, so other people in the company were doing the routines with him, and John Nettles was doing what he'd always done as a double act with my uncle, and then Jeff Hughes did it one year, and Tim Healy, and they all said how difficult it was to learn someone else's material, but also it's not just like learning lines. A lot of it's quite repetitive and arguing amongst yourselves and stuff, and having that be natural. But I'd grown up watching that my entire life. I'd seen my dad and uncle many hundreds of times in summer shows and
arguing. No, we never did argue.
But I'd seen that so much, and I said to my dad, but he said, I remember him telling me these people were struggling to learn everything, and I said, I don't get that, because I know it all. And I'd been to drama school. First of all, I went to Leeds Uni and did classics, weirdly studying Latin and Greek for 3 years, and have never used anything to do with that since, other than having a basis of Latin knowledge when it comes to quizzes.
Mind you, we wrote our first pantomime script together in Latin.
Yeah, it was that long ago.
It didn't go very well, actually.
No, I went to drama school and had a few jobs here and there, and nothing too major. And then I remember Dad said to me, "Shall we give this a go?" And I thought, yeah, why not? Let's do it. And we had a kind of tryout show in London, didn't we? Where we did a lot of the material for the first time together. Obviously, we'd rehearsed, but it went really well. What was quite interesting was when I first started with Dad, That was about 16 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. 2004.
Yeah, any pros that came to watch us would come up to me after and say, "Oh, really well done," but then give me advice and say, "You want to do it like this, you want to do it like, maybe think about that." And it was quite nice within the next sort of 2 or 3 years, as that sort of gradually tailed off. I think they were accepting I was doing it in a reasonable way.
The worrying thing, the first bit of advice he was given was get rid of your dad.
Ben, for you, so when you were growing up, I assume you went to see your dad do panto and do his summer season shows. So what was it like watching your dad do that?
Yeah, sure. It's a lot of people growing up, my mates and stuff when I was at school, kind of found it really exciting what my dad did and couldn't believe it. And I think as a result of that, I would always, in holidays from school, spend 2-3 weeks wherever my dad was in panto, and in the same in the summer, often longer. And what was brilliant was the companies were always really welcoming. And I can remember panto at the Hippodrome in Birmingham when you did Dick Whittington, and I would be sat in the wings for probably 25, 30 performances. And there were parts where all the dancers had to sing off stage on a mic for backing and stuff, and they would all be right beside me where it was happening and sort of make me feel a part of it and stuff. And I loved that. It was never like I was just going to visit a show. It was like you were welcomed into the company. And so watching my dad when I was a kid, it's funny, I remember all the variety shows and things and all the great acts I saw as well, but I was always more interested in watching my dad and uncle. I always enjoyed watching them more than anybody else, even if they were working with big names or whatever. It was just because of being a kid, and that's my dad, and oh wow, and that's my uncle, and brilliant. But they involved me in their act where it was possible, because they do some things where it needed a plant in the audience to shout something out. And obviously, if you've got an 8 or 9-year-old kid shouting out, it's much funnier than an adult doing it. So I do that as well.
You've given it away now. People were laughing at something that was planned.
Yeah, that one night they went to 35 years ago. Like, what happened? No, it kind of was really natural. I mean, it was what I did in my holidays. I went to see my dad wherever he was performing, and other people's parents did all kinds of different jobs, working in offices or factories or whatever they chose to do. I was the only person I knew who had a family member in the performing arts and in the theatre industry like that. And it did feel exciting, but it felt normal as well. It wasn't like, oh, this is brilliant and weird and unusual. It was just, that's what I was used to in my life. So I was always going to get involved in it professionally when I was old enough. I think it was just something I always found enjoyable,
Yeah.
So when it comes to you taking over in 2004, joining together as the Simmons and Simmons, what was it like doing the material that had been done before? How much did you have to tweak? How much did you have to change?
Yeah, that's what's interesting is, and you've watched yourself on videos recently.
Don't tell people that. I'm grown up to watching myself.
No, I don't mean like you've got, I must sit and watch myself now. No, what I mean is someone sent you when you're on TV in the 70s or 80s, and you found it interesting watching yourself. Yeah. But I didn't want to join the act and have us do an act and just be a repeat of my uncle. And obviously it couldn't be that, because my uncle was a bit older than my dad and was more authoritative in that way. So he was always the silly one and my uncle was the straight man. So whilst I wanted to, it's a funny dynamic to have the son be getting annoyed at his dad and the dad be the one who's messing around and being stupid, I wanted to have funny lines and things as well. I didn't want to just be an out-and-out straight man. So we've managed to tweak things a little bit like that. So when we do our act, I do get a few ridiculous things to happen and stuff. But for the most part, I am still a straight man. But it's having that authority without being overly, without being too horrible. It's like you've got to be a family. People know you're a father and son. So if you're just constantly just being mean to him on stage and out horrible, people aren't going to respond to that as an audience, And I think they like it if we're both silly together. But then he obviously goes even more stupid, and then I get more and more frustrated by it.
We did introduce bits as father and son, like he'd start moaning, and I'd say, "Don't moan at me. I'm your father. I used to change your nappies."
Yeah.
And he'd say, "Oh, don't go into that." And I'd say, "I didn't want to go into it then." Think like sophisticated lines like that we were doing. Really.
Yeah, but it was nice to do some of the old Simmons Brothers material and modernise it a little bit as well, and find ways of tweaking it. And not too much. There wasn't anything, because it was tried and tested and was always successful. It's nice to be able to sort of give it a slight modern twist on it and stuff.
Yeah.
Like your vampire flying routine, we've introduced it now as a excerpt from a horror film, but obviously when you used to do that before, it was many different references, and we sort of talk about modern horror references like Saw movies and things like that, now at the start of it, comparatively compared to what you would have had back then.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And for you, Keith, how was it having to adapt to a slightly different energy?
Well, as I say, because I'd done 3 years on my own, working on my own, it gave me a new lease of life, actually, Ben coming in. And it was just interesting to suddenly have that feel of father and son rather than two brothers as we've been before. And let's face it, Alan was a brilliant straight man. He was great, and as Brian as well, Brian and Jimmy, Brian was a great straight man as well. And it's something, I don't know, it's something you learn over years, and it just becomes a definite thing with you, So suddenly having someone who wasn't being such a straight man, who, as he said, wanted to be doing some funny lines as well, but it enabled us to introduce a few new ideas and bits and pieces that used the father and son approach.
And especially because you now write, direct, and star in pantomimes together. How was it sort of coming up with the new stuff?
Interesting. I love writing with Ben now. I mean, I used to write with Alan. He never wrote pantomimes with me. We started writing together for Brian Conley, actually. And then Alan decided he didn't like the pressure of writing, especially for television. So I took that on my own. And then when Ben and I started writing together, especially pantomimes, that took on a new lease of life. And he now, he tells me, and he's right most of the time, that isn't funny. what you've written. And I say, no, you're probably right. And we've gone down a slightly different line. But the pantomime we've written this year, which we may not get to do.
Yeah, it might be postponed.
It's got a couple of really new ideas in it. It's a Jack and the Beanstalk, and we're very proud of some ideas we've put into it.
It's nice when you're writing, and I've not really, other than writing with Dad, I've not written too much stuff on my own, because it's nice to have someone to bounce off. And we can have days where we sit down to write, and you've got to end up with a 50, 60-page script, and you might only get half a page done, and you get stuck on one gag, and it gets really annoying.
We have a trampoline in the garden as well, so we can bounce off that.
Brilliant, yeah.
I just thought of that. That's the sort of material that's holding us back.
That's the sort of stuff I say, not something we can't do. Yeah. No. Sorry. But no, it's nice when you've got someone to bounce off. You have exactly that kind of banter. First of all, it doesn't quite feel like work and writing, because you're coming up with ideas and you might say, will that work? And the other one says, yeah, I like that. Or the other one says, no, or how about we tweak that? And it's nice to, you get a kind of instant audience for something you've just thought of. Whereas if you're writing on your own, you're left thinking, I hope that's all right, whereas you kind of get a feel for it straight away.
Just a tip for anyone who's watching this who wants to be writing, the later at night you write, the less funny it is.
No, but you feel it is funny.
You feel it's very funny, and in the cold light of day, you realise it's pathetic.
I think that's just us. I think different people work at different times of the day, but we have done that. We've had a few sessions where we finished late and said, yeah, we'll finish there, come back to that tomorrow, and go, why did we think that was good?
And then we realised it was the drink.
Speaking of good ideas, I want to sort of come to one little bit before we move on to Damian and Brighton for now. Keith, so I've worked with Keith before. I did the Panto Academy last year with you, Keith.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely love that. And there was one story that you told about when you did Dick Whittington, when you directed Dick Whittington with Leslie Joseph.
Yeah.
And it was the opening of Leslie Joseph's bit. I really want you to tell me that story again, because I absolutely love that.
I'm really proud of that opening, because she played Dorian in what was Birds of a Feather.
Yeah.
And this sex-crazed character. So, and although it was pantomime, she was playing the Wicked Queen. So I had this idea of a flunky standing on stage right at the opening of the thing against the back of a throne, and a phone rang and he picked it up, and she was playing Fairy Bowbells, and he'd say, hello, Fairy Bowbells residents. What's that? You want Fairy Bowbells to come and rescue the babes in the wood? I'm sorry, she's far too busy. And he'd put the phone down, and then it would ring again. And hello, Mother Goose is in trouble. No, I'm sorry, we can't spare Fairy Bowbells. And he'd put the phone down again. And then it would ring a third time, and someone would say, what was the third one? I can't even remember what it would be now. Oh, Aladdin. Aladdin needs help. No, I'm sorry, I can't spare Fairy Bowbells to see Aladdin. Put the phone down. And then a fourth time, and it was very unusual to be, because you normally have the rule of 3 in comedy, but it was the rule of 4, because the fourth one, he'd say, hello, what's that? A young boy, Dick Whittington, is in trouble. And then the throne would spin round, and it would be Leslie, and she'd say, I'll deal with this one. And she'd take it. It was just the link up, and it was the mention of Dick Whittington, all sorts of things that hopefully went above the kids' heads. But it was just the young boy, that she was interested in. But we tried it with 2 before it, and then doing it her on the third one. But it worked better 3 before it and her on the fourth one. I can't explain why. But it was just one of those things that worked better.
Because obviously when we're talking about comedy, and I'll bring Damian and Brian in on this one as well, when we talk about comedy, we talk about the idea of the rule of 3.
I think so long.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Now we can learn something while we listen to these two.
Well, speaking of these two, Simmons and Simmons, we'll see you in a little while, and we'll remove you. And hello.
Hello there.
Now, Damian, we've had you on before, so this isn't really as much about you as it is about your dad. But it's always nice, I think. Who are these people? Never heard them before. Say hello from me, Mr. Hayden Parker. Lovely.
Hello, Hayden. Panto podcast.
A couple of people like sending in messages as well. Do send in your questions. If you've got any questions, please do send them in. We'll have a question and answer at the end of these. So, Brian, we've had a little chat before when I've done my radio stuff.
We did, yes.
I really want to know from you, just for the benefit of this, how did you start in the business show?
Well, my first thing, I went on stage when my brother Jimmy, who was a comic, he'd had 2 years before me, and I went to the Theatre Royal Loughborough, and my first thing, taking over from a fellow called Ronnie Dukes, who did the tap dance at the end of their thing, because I did tap dancing. And I was taking over there. And I got there and I put my bank parts down, my dots, and they played it. And it was completely different to what I was expecting to do. So I did my tap routine, and it had finished after one chorus. It was the fleets in port again, back home, in port again, home. So I panicked horribly, went down to the dressing room in tears. So a great start to the business. And the lad said, "Oh, just do the same thing the second time." So that's how it ended up my first week, crapping a break, to put it nicely, every night, panicking about going on and not knowing what I was going to do for the second chorus. But it went great. I mean, Ronnie Dukes had done it, and a couple of others had done it. And Ronnie was older than me, so he'd obviously left. And so that was my first introduction. And then I went home, and it wasn't because of that. It seemed as if it was because of the act had finished. But I went home, and then my dad phoned up. Our dad had worked with a great act that were kids things, and he got me in with him. He phoned them, and he said, "Oh, we'd love to have Brian. He sings, he tap dances, does comedy." So I went to my first week was at Huddersfield, and I went on stage with Billy West and his Harmony Boys at Halifax the next week, which was great. Loved it.
And for you, obviously we all know you with Jimmy as the Patton brothers. So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
did that double act combination start working then?
Well, we always said we wanted to be a double act. So, as I say, he had to go into the RAF when I was just still on the green. So we couldn't get together before then. So when Jimmy came out of the RAF, I had to go in because we had 2 years difference. So I had 2 years there. So we only started our act in 1954 because Jimmy had been out of there and doing stuff on his own, top the bill in Panto and things like that. And we said, we're going to get together. So we did an audition at City Varieties Leeds for a fellow called Bob Gray and Philip Hinden. And they, marvellous, we must have you with us. And they'd got this touring review which had strippers and we were the comics for it. They'd had a fellow called George E. Beck, who was the comic, and George was still with it for a couple of weeks, but he somehow had swallowed the wrong stuff. He'd swallowed something which was like disinfectant, and he'd ruined his throat and everything. So he lasted for 2 weeks, and then we were the comics. We took over, and this Bob Gray was called the Ace Showman, and we loved it. Had a great 2 years.
And Brian, you've played doing Panto. You've done Panto for many years as a double act and playing a variety of different roles. Obviously, as henchman, as the comedy sidekicks in Aladdin, Ugly Sisters as well. You've done Ugly Sisters as well.
We've done Ugly Sisters, yeah. First time at Newcastle.
Oh, Newcastle, yeah. I'm new from Newcastle. That's always lovely to hear.
Yeah,
play my local. So what was it like then?
It was with Ronnie Corbett. Well, we'd done. I mean, Jim had played Dame in Pantos and we were fine. We just loved it, and it was great because Ronnie didn't want to be near the bar. If you know the theatre at Newcastle, he didn't want to be near the bar, so he was in a different room. So I was in number 1 dressing room, and Jimmy was in number 2 because it's straight across from the bar. So he didn't. I don't want all that noise. So we loved it. Because Stuart Granger, who I've always loved in films, was coming in the week after I was, and I thought, he's got to be in my room. Wonderful feel, loved it.
I find it's always different when you first play Ugly Sisters as a double act or even on your own, because you're so used to playing, either the straight man, the comic, your comedy roles in a certain way, but then you've also got to add on for the first time in front of an audience the wigs, the makeup, you've got to change your personality as well slightly. So it's always as a double doing that the first time as Ugly Sisters. It's you've slightly got to tweak your performance, but it's still good fun. You can still do all your bits of routines and that.
Loved it.
Do you remember your first time as Ugly Sisters? What Panto that was, or what year that was?
That was at Newcastle.
Oh, it was
Ronnie Corbett. Well, Ronnie Corbett had said it was lovely, Ronnie. We worked with him a heck of a lot. And he said, you can get more money, lads, playing the Ugly Sisters because they don't need brokers men then. So we had no brokers men. We were the Ugly Sisters. So the first one was in Newcastle. And then after that, they were saying, you'll get more money. You get more money. I said, well, I like the sound of that. As anyone would. So that was it.
I don't blame you for that. And also, on top of the idea of the hair, the makeup, all that, you've got the booze, you've got the I don't know what the word for anti-pathos is. You've got the idea of the Cinderella, you will never go into the ball section.
I was always the nasty one. I was always used to get out of it to the kids. So it was lovely for me, He'd suddenly go on and say, Jim would say, he'd set it up and say, he hates kids, If he sees any kids, he'll shout, get out of him. Will you shout it back at him? So I'd go on and go, hello, it's good to see you. Kids, get out of it. And of course, they'd shout back at me, just a minute. So that was it. So loved it. And we came on our knees a few times. That was good. It's a good entrance for Damian whenever. We used to come on in little boots.
I remember that. I've got a few photos of you. Your entrance used to be both of you coming on your knees, so you look obviously smaller. Yeah. And then they suddenly get up, and then you've got the boots on the knees. It's like, oh my goodness. But yeah, the funny thing you said, Robert, getting boozed the first time. My first ever panto professionally, I was playing the wolf, big bad wolf in
with us
in Red, with you in Red Riding Hood at the Bolton Albert Halls. But that was my first professional show. And
But in
obviously,
booths.
I'd done comedy before that in like amateur dramatics. But you first go on stage and you get booed, the whole audience. So it was very different. Obviously, having that as your first professional experience. But it can be just as good as laughs sometimes, because the amount of boos, they want to drown you out what you're saying. Even as Ugly Sisters, sometimes when you're doing that ticket tearing routine with Cinderella, if the audience are, not on your side, but if they're into the show, they will boo and they'll keep booing, and you can hardly hear your lines coming out, which is obviously different to just playing comedy where they're laughing at the right times and you can get your lines out, unless the place is in fits of laughter.
Yeah, but not only that, when we were Ugly Sisters, or when we were the robbers, actually, I was again the nasty one, and we used to have to make sure we had big hats on because they threw things. They used to throw.
No.
Oh, always throwing things, yeah.
Underwear?
Chocolates and sweets. Well, not underwear. No, I don't think the underwear. With our luck, they're being big bloomers, so no.
It's like Rocky Horror. Brian, I want to also talk about the London Palladium, because I know you did Panto at the London Palladium. How many times did you do it again?
Well, the first time we did it was a one-off. We suddenly got a phone call from Francis Essex, who was directing, saying, lads, would you do me a favour? We said, yes, anything for you, man. He said, would you come on the Palladium? What? Of course, come on the Palladium. And he said, I've got a new compere coming. And he said, can you guess who it is? Well, we said, well, no, Bruce has been doing it. So we said, is it somebody, Roy Castle? No. Well, is it? And it was the bloke we went with. So I'm Norman Vaughan. So Norman came up and rehearsed with us. We were doing Panto at Birmingham at the Alex. And he came on, rehearsed with it on stage for the tap routine. So then we went down on the night and it was live, the Palladium live. And he came up and said, oh, I'm a bit nervous. I'm going on now. And the stage doorkeeper said, well, the lads are just going on. Why didn't you go? We said, yeah, come on with us. We're all right. We're just going off to do a tap routine. So we came on through the back of the stage, I don't know how, and to this wonderful battery, because the Palladium didn't have headlights. Well, it just had headlights, sorry, it didn't have foots. And we went on with this wonderful round of applause for the new compere, not for Jim and I. And we did a tap routine, tapping away, the three of us, we'd learned this with him. Then he said, keep going, lads, keep going. He went to the side, tapping his heart, saying, oh, keep going, dear old. We finished the routine to a fabulous applause. We thought, this is great. Went off, and he said, by the way, who was that? So he never told who the hell we were. So we thought, that's marvellous. Luckily, the next week he did say, by the way, those two great guys dancing with the Patton brothers. So that was it. And I thought, dear, oh dear, because it was live, panicky.
But then you did Panto there as well.
Panto with Ronnie Corbett, Clodagh Rogers, all lovely people, Terry Scott, Malcolm Roberts, David Kossoff, everybody on earth.
Six months then, wasn't it? It wasn't 6 months long.
Yes, we even went back to Butlins to do a Easter, and we were still at the Palladium. So we thought we're going to do that. So we went back to Ronnie Corbett's house, which was Croydon. And that was it. We were chatting to everybody. Jimmy Talbot came round, the old people. So we loved it. Wonderful.
You're hard pressed now to get 6 weeks of Panto, let alone 6 months.
Well, we're hard pressed to get anything.
Right. Especially this year. Oh no. Oh dear.
I'm retired now. Not retired hurt, so that's good.
Oh, well, bless you. I just want to ask, obviously, Panto at the Palladium, well, pantomime in any respects of the art form is a marvellous thing. But to do Panto at the Palladium, whenever the Palladium is mentioned in anything, it just seems to add about £10 worth of weight in gold to anything.
It certainly used to, yes, it certainly used to.
So what is it like for you to say that for you to say the fact that you stood on the Palladium stage? Because not many people get to say that.
Well, you used to go there because I always loved a guy called Donald O'Connor. I don't know if you remember him. And I knew Donald had been there. And I used to walk on the stage before the show or whatever and stand in the middle and think, who's been here? Because everybody on earth. Eleanor Powell, great tap dancer, because Jim and I tap dancers, and I thought, she's been here. And everybody on earth. And we'd have them coming in and just say, Peggy Mount came backstage and said, wish I could tap dance, lads. And I thought, Peggy Mound, what the hell she want to tap dance for? Great comedian. And we had the same Jimmy Edwards. Wish I could tap dance, lads. And we thought, that's unbelievable. Malcolm Roberts was in our next dressing room, and he had a girl came around. He said, by the way, I've just had a young. I said, who was it? Susan George. And she'd just done Straw Dogs, which was a wonderful thing. And we said, oh, if she comes again, next minute, tap, tap, tap on the door, Susan George chatting to us. That was the wonderful thing about the Palladium. You thought, some would say to Ronnie, who's in today? Someone's, oh, wonderful, yes. Marvellous. Daniel Roux came in, and he wanted us to go with him up to Palace Manchester for Panto the next year. But Ronnie said, oh, I want you with me. So obviously, Roux stayed with Ron. So marvellous days, wonderful. So the Palladium...
Was the Palladium the one where they asked you what colour dressing room you wanted painting?
Yes. They said we paint the dressing rooms, yes. so we said, oh, well, I wanted... My favourite was yellow. I don't know why, perhaps the backbone. And Jimmy was pink. Jim's always been pink. So we had two walls pink and two on yellow. So that was wonderful. Anybody coming in thought, good God, what's this?
I don't think they do that now. I don't think they do that with Pantos now in the Palladium. So you're lucky that happened. That's good. I've never been offered that. I've never.
I don't know about lucky, but yeah. Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
Made it homely for 6 months, I bet.
Oh, wonderful! Really was.
I've always when I was growing up, and I went to obviously see my dad and uncle in Panto. Like obviously, I know Ben said he went every year, but. You always go into my dad's dressing room and Jim's dressing room, and every single wall, obviously they weren't painted like the Palladium, but every single wall was like the bills that they'd been in through the Palladium. Yeah. And there was no wall space left. It was always like a gallery of Pantos and summer seasons, and it was great because all the cast, I remember when I did Panto with them twice, they used to come in just to look at, obviously say hi and that, but just to look at the walls, and they'd spend 20 minutes looking at all the Pantos and bills and that. And obviously I've got my Pantos on my wall, but nowhere near. I do take them, and I've taken that. I take them to my Pantos, and I put some of them on the walls because it's not only nice for you to look at, it's nice for other people to just, come and look at. And
when they come in, it's lovely.
Yeah, be all Christmassy. So that's always good.
So can you remember the first Panto that you saw with your dad?
First Panto I saw him in, or when I was, not specifically the exact Panto, but I obviously remember every single year going to watch him in Panto. And just like Ben was saying a minute ago, my favourite parts of the show was when your dad and uncle would come on the stage. And no matter how many times you've seen, the routines before, they're firstly always slightly different because you can tell they're having fun. So I'm having fun, but it's just to know, that's your dad and that's your family and everyone is watching the stage and that happen. It's something about it. And then I remember thinking, obviously one day I didn't know that could be something I could do when I grew up because I was still a kid. But I remember when I got a bit older thinking, I'd love to do what they're doing on the stage. And let alone, little did I know later that my first Panto would be with them in the cast. And I never got to do a scene. I never got to do a scene with them, I don't think. But
you did the ghost gag with us.
Oh, that was it. I was the ghost as the wolf in the ghost gag. So I got to chase them off. But just being backstage and doing a Christmas season with my dad and Jim the first time there, not only was it my first experience as a professional show, being in it, but being able to perform with who I've been watching for, 17 years beforehand. And then I got to do it the second year, my first 2 Pantos. That was the only other time I've worked in Billingham. I got to do a scene with them, and I chased you off as the innkeeper because you were being silly as the robbers. And it was just such a great experience to work with who you've been looking at.
Damian was always brilliant at watching. I said, that's what you should do. Watch. You're not just watching what's good. You're watching what is rubbish. People who are chatting on stage while somebody else is working or upstaging people. And he's always done that. He's always been great. for that.
Well, I remember when I was younger. Obviously, you were doing the Dougie Chapman Good Old Days shows, you know, and variety shows, and that toured, or you know, even if it was in the same place. But I'd always get on the holidays to sit at the side of the stage on a chair, just watching. And even if you'd been on and done your act, I would then watch the rest of the show. Say it was an illusionist, or say it was you know, another singer maybe. I'd always watch what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then that obviously moved on to the Chuckle shows, because you were in the Chuckle shows for a good 20 years while I was growing up. So I got to sit at the side and watch all four of you then. Yeah, doing your get out of it, and then obviously my other
Jim
three
doing
uncles
no
were all there.
slacking for Jim,
And then my favourite part, some of my favourite parts of those shows was when all four of you, so you, Jim, Uncle Barry, and Uncle Paul, were playing the drums at the end. Do you know, you're all in a line, and you all
four
used to
sets
play
of drums.
That's it, play the drums up and down, and obviously you can see them on YouTube doing it. But I always used to love those bits.
Well, I came across the sand dance routine the other day that you did
with the four of us.
Yeah, with the four of you leading into the 12 Days of Exploring.
Yes.
Oh, in the Chuckle shows. Yeah, they were good.
Yeah. So what was it like? What was it like then? This is my final question. We'll bring back Ben and Keith in just a bit. So obviously in some of the latter years of doing panto, for you, Brian, you got to do panto with obviously Jimmy, but also Paul and Barry as well. Yeah. So what was that
it dropped us in it in a way, because we held the record, well, still do hold the record of the most pantos done on the trot and whatever since. But, I mean, we did pantos every summer as well. We did pantos. So we've always done millions of them, which was always good. But, you know, it's just something that we always did and always loved doing. And our dad, we used to go and see our dad in panto because he was a comic. And marvelous. We love panto. Panto's always been great. As Keith said, the same. You know, wonderful.
And you've got to do Aladdin as well with Paul and Barry and Jimmy together for a couple of years as well.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Yes, I was. You know, I played Ebenezer in panto as well. I did it with Beryl when Beryl Johnson used to be she'd be Aladdin for Dougie Chapman. And I was Ebenezer up on the back.
So it's always good. It's always good, I feel, to go into a show. So you with Uncle Jimmy, and then eventually, obviously, Paul and Barry. But it's always good to go into a show, into a rehearsal room, when you know someone that is also there. Because when you walk into a fresh cast and it's just you, which I've done before, obviously it takes a while to meet everyone. But then, if you, you know, you always had Uncle Jimmy with you, so you already had a connection if no one else was talking. And going back to that routine thing we were talking about, you had your routines that you could just slot in, so it made the process of rehearsing a lot easier. And then I remember when you were doing the Chuckle shows, the rehearsals, because all four of them knew all the routines, the rehearsals was almost just an afternoon around someone's house going, oh, we'll do this routine, and then we'll all get together and do who, what, why, and all of this. And then, you know, it was just the whole show would be done in 20 minutes almost.
I guess that's similar.
It certainly looked like it, yeah.
I guess that's similar for you, Keith and Ben, as well. When you've been doing pantos on the trot for many years, you've got a bunch of routines that you can just slip in.
Well, we worked with, when Alan was with Keith, we did do only one show together, which was lovely, which was at Luton. At Luton.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
And we went on before the lads. So we did get to see them, and they were great.
I've just got to say, you mentioned a YouTube. There's a bit of the four of you, the Chuckles on YouTube. I didn't get into the sand dance, but it's where you all come on your hands are on each other's shoulders.
Yes.
God, I think it's hilarious.
The hand routine, it's good.
Hands appearing from everywhere, aren't they?
It's good.
Brilliant. I love it. Yeah, fantastic.
People watching, if anybody's got any questions, do put them in on the screen. We've got a couple of people here that have got some hellos to say to. We've got a lot of people that are saying, this is from Jake saying, looking forward to it. Met the Patton brothers a few times at the Chuckle shows. Lovely fellas. We've got legends. Apparently, you are legends.
Correct. I agree.
Correct. Correct.
Damo,
And look like it, yeah.
Damo,
Love
this
this,
is the one
Damo.
for you. Love this, Damien. I've never met someone who loves pantomime as much as you. I mean, looking
Thank
at
you.
you all, I think we can all agree with that. Lovely David Burton, who was on last week, says, wonderful seeing Brian and Damien once again. Love to you both. Great pros. Always a big pleasure to be with and chat.
David's a good lad.
Here's a question for actually, as well as the Patton brothers, I think this is a good one for Ben as well. Watching your dad. What routines did you like from watching your dads do that you enjoy doing in panto as well?
Well, yeah, my dad and uncle always had, I would say, their two sort of biggest routines they did in panto were their disappearing sword cabinet routine, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the vampire sort of flying routine. And we obviously, I'd always thought they were funny anyway, but to know you're involved in something then that you already know is that funny, and you've been in an audience when people have been sort of crying with laughter at something, that vampire
Where did that happen?
that vampire routine where it's up on a rope, we've had people write reviews on that saying the audience were in hysterics and whatever, and you always take reviews with a pinch of salt, but when you've seen it as a kid and then you do it yourself, there's something so satisfying about knowing the bits that are going to work and hoping you can do justice to it. And I got such a buzz from doing that. And the magic sword cabinet routine as well, that just appeals to my sense of humour so much anyway. But even if I didn't know you, I would have found that hilarious, the swords going in and the end coming out in the wrong place and all that kind of stuff. And just the mucking about you could do with it. I love being on stage and getting to do that. And when it's your job and you're kind of performing and you want to do justice in the entire show anyway, you kind of lose a bit of that, the fact that, oh my God, I'm actually doing this thing that I saw you do when I was growing up. And it's a really great feeling.
Damo, for you, what would you say?
So there's two really. My favourite one that I watched them perform was actually a song that they used to do, and it was called Wait a minute, I think it's called. I don't know what the name is.
We Ain't Going Nowhere.
We Ain't Going Nowhere. That's the one. And it's like a tongue-twisting, really fast song. And you'll only seen it because I don't think it's on YouTube. I have got a copy somewhere, but I must put it up.
It is on.
Yeah, you'll have only seen it if you watched a panto. But it's so fast and it gets quicker and quicker, and it's all about going back and forth as the double. I always used to watch that in the pantos and just love it. Yeah, but my favourite one to perform is just routines that I've seen them do in the past, and I know everyone's done versions of them, but the radio routine and the ice cream routine, the way that I watched my dad do it, I've obviously taken that, and I love doing the ice cream gag and getting messy and doing the falls that they used to do. So it's good to carry on the tradition of what you grew up with, knowing that it works so well. And, people are still laughing like it's the first time they've seen it, even if you've done it, or even if someone's seen it 100 times before. But you get messy, or the radio might explode. And I'm sure, we've all done them and we've all seen them, but it's the ways that they come across.
Fantastic.
That's my favourite to do. Yeah.
And I love that story that Brian told about Norman Vaughan. Somebody saying, who was that?
Who were they? Yes. We thought at the time, bloody hell. I thought, the good heavens, what's that? Who was that? Who was that?
I worked with Norman on a tour of the good old days, the BBC good old days, and Frankie Vaughan was topping the bill. And one night, Frankie said to the audience, because he knew none of us were now listening on the tannoys, he said, ladies and gentlemen, would you do me a big favour? When Norman Vaughan comes down in the walk down, would you give him a standing ovation? And sure enough, when Norman came down, the whole audience stood, and he actually turned round to see who else had come on.
For me?
He was a lovely guy, Norman.
He was a good lad.
Yeah.
He got a bit twitchy at the end, towards the end, when we worked over in Jersey with him on odd nights.
Oh,
and
right.
he'd got a twitch of some kind, a bit like Jack Douglas, which was sad, really, yeah. Yeah, because Jack used to do it as a hey, hey.
Yeah.
And
Well, you know,
on
Eric Winston, the band leader.
yes, he did. Oh, he's been in the pit for us, yeah.
Eric
Oh, and he was always smooth.
sent him a telegram. I want some commission.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Man, which one do you mean by this? I don't know. My mum's watching. I have no idea what routine you're on about. Is that some sort of inside joke? Then that's news to me. I just thought I'd question that just in case my mum was watching. Keith, I wanted to ask you a question because you've got a very big honour bestowed on you with the Water Rats.
Yeah.
So tell a little bit more about that because that is like some. What is the Water Rats? Because I'm still a bit unsure what they are.
It's a show business fraternity and charity that there's only 200 members at any one time. We got into it because we were doing pantomime with Danny LaRue, and at the time Danny LaRue was King Rat. And, he spoke to us about it, and he proposed my brother and I for the Rats, and we were seconded by a great guy called Joe Church. Do you remember Joe, Brian?
We were with Joe, yeah, we did panto with him.
Yeah, what a fashion bloke he was as well, yeah. Fran, my wife Fran, she did panto with Joe and Pat Stark, Joe's wife.
Yeah.
Aladdin at Lewisham, and Valentine Dial was Abanazar in that, and Billy Dainty was in that pantomime.
Billy, love Billy, yeah.
Yeah, God, I what a great guy he was. But no, the Rats is still going strong, and actually I'm going to a Walter Rats funeral next week for a wonderful guy called Charlie Noble, who was an instrumentalist, a multi-instrumentalist, an Irish comic, but a lovely man. And sadly, we've just lost him, so I'm going down to his, Fran and I are going down to his funeral on next Thursday.
It's quite exclusive, the Water Rats. They do a lot of great stuff for charity. They organise shows and events and always trying to raise money for people in the business, but also people outside the business, anybody who's sort of hit hard times or whatever. And it's nice that it's getting together with a lot of other sort of like-minded performers, and there's some big names in it, and there's some people
well, there's me.
There's some people who the public wouldn't know of necessarily, and you're all kind of on a level, all trying to do the best you can.
I'm very involved with the British Music Hall Society now as well. I've got quite involved with them. That's a great setup as well. And they did a marvellous function for Ken Dodd's 90th birthday, which thank God he was able to get to before we finally went to Ken Dodd's funeral in Liverpool. The most amazing thing. They had two giant tickling sticks on the balcony of the town hall. And it was like the whole city came to a standstill for him. It was incredible.
First time I ever met Ken Dodd, I think I was 3, wasn't I? And my mum brought me to the Alex Panto where Dad was with Alan and with Ken Dodd topping the bill. And backstage, I think it was in the interval, wasn't it? Backstage, Ken got introduced to Ken in my mum's arms, obviously, and they're like, "Oh, this is Uncle Ken," and he gave me a tickling stick. And they put me down on the floor. I was looking at this tickling stick. I don't remember this. I've just been told. It had a sort of plastic part on the bottom of the stick. And I ripped that off and put the stick really far down my throat. And a lot of problems, was bleeding, was crying, was coughing stuff up. My mum, who'd never been to Birmingham before, had to find an A&E and drive me to hospital.
Oh, my God. There's a memory. There's a memory.
And on that note, let's play a game. This game we haven't played in a while. And the reason why we're playing it is because someone in this little situation here has a bestowed honour of being a 60-second champion. I wonder who that could be, Damian.
I can do many things in 60 seconds.
But so basically, Amy, don't hesitate.
No need for that.
You've got a slapped wrist there. Got a slapped wrist. The aim of the game, basically, we're going to do it twice. So, Damien, I assume you want to do it. So, between the father and son, you can choose who wants to go, and then you're going to get a chosen subject for 60 seconds, and you can't hesitate. You can't you can't You've got to talk about that subject, and if you hesitate, time stops. So, I'll let you discuss who wants to go.
What, at 86? Yeah, should be very good.
I think that's Damian for you.
I'll go
I
first.
can't remember my name. Do you mind?
But do you want to have a go, Brian? Do you want to have a go?
Well, I don't mind. Yeah. What are we chatting about? We don't know yet.
We don't
know yet. No.
Is it half a minute each or what?
60. You got to try and do 60 seconds
Each.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might as well do each.
That's all right. We'll go for it. Yes.
So,
Right.
who's
So
gonna
I'll go first. I'll go first.
Oh, it's very good. Very good. Yes.
Right.
Good luck, Damien.
Damian,
You're right.
You're-
It needs it.
your chosen subject is coaches.
Do I go?
Well, how do you feel about that? Because what was the last one you had?
Coaches. Now it depends if we're talking about football coaches or coaches that you drive on. So if we're talking about coaches that you drive on, there's lots of many different coaches you can get on with, bars and sleeping beds and fridges. People might go on tour on a coach. I remember the Chuckle Brothers had a sort of coach where all four of them would go in the back and be driven around playing cards. If we're talking about football coaches, not a clue, because I don't play football. I never have. I'm no good at it. I'd be a basketball player. I'm tall enough. But coaches, what else about coaches? They got 4 wheels, an engine, and I hope it's been 60 seconds because I'm running out of things to say about coaches. No. Oh.
That was a pause. That was a pause. That was a pause.
How long did I get?
Did you do a minute?
No, I don't think
9
so.
seconds.
Oh, it felt
I
like
had 39 seconds.
But
Felt
hey,
like a
you
minute.
you've got a 60 seconds champion title already. I'm not going to take that away from you.
That's very good. I'm pleased. Am I starting?
Your turn now.
Do you want to go
No,
next?
you've got a different subject. You've got a different
Oh,
subject
right.
now.
Well, that's all right. I'm glad because I'd already sorted coaches.
You've got eggs.
Go for it,
Eggs.
Bob.
Good
Oh,
luck.
well, I've always loved eggs. I really have. I mean, I like them poached. I like them fried. I like them boiled. I like any kind of egg. I was a cook in the RAF. And, of course, in the RAF, you used to cook on a tray. You used to cook eggs on a tray. You'd have this huge tray when you were cooking for hundreds of...
Stop. You said,
What?
you said,
You said
Did I say her? Well, you never told me I couldn't say her. Is it her indoors? I don't know. Never told me I said her. I didn't know I did not say her, you see.
that was
Oh,
that was
dear.
20 seconds.
20 seconds. Oh,
cheating.
well.
20 seconds that was.
Cheated.
That was
Cheated.
27. Right, okay. Out of Keith and Ben, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. All right.
right. I'll do
Right.
that.
So, Keith, your chosen subject is buttons. How do you feel about that before we start the time?
I feel fine. Yeah.
Good.
Buttons, Buttons is one of the great characters in pantomime. I've written many parts for Buttons and seen many people play the part. It can be a very funny role, but it can also be very sad because obviously Buttons gets turned down by the lovely Cinderella, who, although she likes him, doesn't want him as a boyfriend, and Buttons really wants to be her boyfriend. But of course, she falls in love with Prince Charming, who on the side is a bit of a devil. But well, he's not. But
Oh, you said, you said,
yeah,
that
okay.
was
It's fair enough.
28 seconds.
Pathetic.
28 seconds. We still can't beat, we can't beat Damian there.
Yeah.
Forgot my name then, didn't you?
I did have to,
Yeah,
I had to
thingy,
say it, I would've
yeah.
been out. So,
Now I'm worried. I'm
pressure
worried.
on. So, Ben, your chosen subject is banners. Before we start, how do you feel about that?
I'm apprehensive about banners, to be honest. The most experience I've ever had with banners is ordering promotional banners to advertise shows that we've been appearing in. I remember when we Get Happy show in Margate, we had to get a 12-foot banner put on some railings just above the theatre. And I was going along well, and then it's all gone violently wrong.
That was 14 seconds.
Oh, that's pathetic.
I've let myself down.
14 seconds, which means, once again, Damian Patton is the winner.
Well,
Trophy's in the post, is it?
Good. Yes.
I didn't know I was going to sweat so much at the end of this.
I'll send you a 12-foot banner to celebrate. So well done.
Oh, thank you. And an egg. I'll have an egg as well from Brian.
Yes.
Brought on
Oh,
Buttons if you want as well. I don't mind supplying chocolate buttons.
Oh, thank you. I'll have that. Yes, I'll have that.
Before we ask the final question, there's one thing that I remember from when Keith, when you taught Panto Academy, was you talking about working with Neil Morrissey and Panto.
Yeah.
So what was that? Because obviously you both did that together with Paul Holman. What was that like working with Neil Morrissey?
Great guy, Neil. I mean, when he came in, he doesn't mind admitting it. I'm trying not to say now. He was financially had some problems. He didn't want to declare himself bankrupt because he wanted to pay back all the people he owed. So he was taking all sorts of work, and he never planned to do a panto, but he came in. So he wasn't really ready for the first one, but he was brilliant in it.
It was brilliant.
And got rebooked the second year and came back and did it a second year at Derby with us. The first one was Cinderella.
Yeah, then Aladdin.
And the second one was Aladdin. And
he was excellent. He was really great to work with as well. I mean, sometimes you get top of the bills in panto who are a little bit aloof and kind of keep themselves to themselves and don't really get involved with the company. But he really did. He felt like just another great company member.
Yeah.
And he has admitted, we did a thing last year with some videos looking back at your panto career, and we had him on as a guest, and he said he was shocked at the amount of stuff that was expected of him to learn in the panto. He thought he'd have a bit of an easy time at the top of the bill. And he said, what, I've got to learn everything I'm saying and be in dance routines, and I've got to learn to sing songs as well. But he really did throw himself into it and was brilliant. And I've got to say, out of all the years I've been doing panto, you probably experienced this before, and certainly you guys as well, but just walking through the town with him when we were in Derby, he would just constantly getting stopped by people who were so pleased to get to meet him and would just say, I loved you, and men behaving badly, you were brilliant, I thought it was hilarious, thank you so much. And people were getting selfies at that time and wanting autograph and stuff, but so many people actually just wanted to shake his hand and say hello, and he was happy to do that. He wasn't bothered by it. He had a lot of time for people like that as well. It was great.
I wonder if Brian's had this, because we did one pantomime with Eartha Kitt, the only panto she ever did at Manchester Palace. But everyone in the business warned me before we started it, she'll be a lot of trouble. And you go into the first day, like Damian was saying, your first day when you don't know many people. And I was very wary of Eartha Kitt, and she was absolutely lovely. She was charming, came out for meetings with us all. We were always going in her dressing room, having chats. She was great. So totally the wrong impression I was given. I wondered if that ever happened with you, with anyone, where you were told, be wary of them,
Probably. I can't remember exactly, but no, I mean, you're lucky most times. We've had the other. We found, and you probably the opposite. You probably loved him, but Terry Scott, I found him because I opened the door for him once for him to go through because he was playing Dame. Never said thank you or kissed my so I thought, no, that's not nice. So I never did it again. Slam it in his face. No, but Jim found him fine. Jim used to go down. We used to do the sweep on for who scored the most goals in football, all around everybody's room. And Jim found him fine, but he used to wear a caftan. And have all the girls in his room. That was his. Hope I'm not dropping him in it with anyone. But yes, all the girls were down telling him tales. He's going, why did you do that? Why did you do that? So that was his main thing, I think. So no wonder he didn't shout to me.
I never worked with Terry. We had his wife as a choreographer one year. But I never worked with him. He did come in to see, when we were with Jeffrey Holland several times, he came in to see Jeff and came in the dressing room that we were sharing. But I did hear a lot of nasty stories about him, unfortunately, which is sad.
I know. Well, Jeff was a lovely guy. He came and chatted to us when we were doing panto with, what the hell was it, with everybody. There were all sorts there at Cardiff. And he came in and saw us. And yet in came the other guy that was from his thing, the top man. I've forgotten his name now. Typical, isn't it?
Paul Shane. Paul Shane, no.
No, Paul was lovely. No,
Yeah,
it was, but he was. He came in and was. No, well, yeah, I played Dame, and not one thing about well done, lads, or anything like that. I played Dame, and I like that costume you got. Nothing. I thought, well, good heavens, if somebody was crap, and I went there, to put it nicely, and I went round, I wouldn't say nothing about them. I'd say, well done, lads, and that's it. But not a thing. I thought.
I even saw you and Jimmy at Norwich in the pantomime there with, God, who were you with?
Paul Henry?
No, not Paul Henry. You did more than one at Norwich, did you?
Yeah, we did several. Yeah.
I can't remember who, but I thought you were brilliant. It was, and you did that opening where you came on your knees.
On the knees, yeah.
A great entrance. That,
well, when Jim's leg went, he used to have trouble with his legs. I used to be on the knees and him walking me on as a little fellow with him, which was a nice idea as well. So that was all right. Because he said, I can't get down on the knees.
I've never had an experience like that, like with people. But in comparison to you, well, all three of you, really, I'm only on. This year would be my 14th panto, whereas I've got to catch up. I've got 50, 60, 30. I've got all these to try and beat. So keep going. A few more years.
Doing our best, yes.
Before we go, or you think about going, Robert, can I just say, someone's put in the comments they loved our Doodah sketch. So thanks to
Jamie.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that's another one as well. I remember Dad wrote that originally for a summer show.
For Cromer, yeah.
In Cromer, and we adapted that into doing it in panto, which we did in Cinderella. And we did it first at Worthing, didn't we, with Mark Reed from the boy band A1 and Matt Evers, who's one of the skaters on Dancing on Ice. And that's nice as well, to have your own thing that you know works, that you always need other people to be a part of. So it's your routine, but you can't do it without 4 people. So you know other people are going to get involved in it, and they love doing that as well. It became a bit of a thing. And yeah, it is. When I first saw you do that in Cromer, I must have been about 17, 16. I thought it was such a funny idea.
Could I have that in writing?
Lovely Danny Rogers has said he loves to do on the ice cream gags.
There, I did. So he did. I also had the ice cream gag.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Danny Rogers as well. Brilliant.
Oh, bless him.
Well, Jimmy Cricket did it with us. Jimmy did it with us, and he's never not used it since. He's done it every year since.
Right. He must have liked it.
And yet never used us again.
This is my second last question. This is quite an interesting one, but describe your career in 3 words. Let's start with Keith.
That's difficult.
That is difficult. 3 words. Absolutely bloody marvellous.
I'll have that one. Brian, we'll come to you next.
Loved every minute.
Great.
Nice.
Ben, Dame, I'm not going to ask you because you've got you've got plenty of time to answer that question. My final question, Dame, I remember asking you this on episode 1, and little did we know what was going to happen as we went on and did this. And I guess a lot of people, we still don't know what's going to happen. So my sort of general question is, why is local theatre important? And I think, again, back to Damo, we've obviously, when we did the first episode, this was only supposed to be a temporary thing. Little did we know theatres were going to be shut for a prolonged period of time. So generally, I'm going to start, anyone can start. Why do we think local theatres are important?
Yeah, well,
you
want to say,
Dave? Yeah, you go.
But obviously, certainly pantomime in local theatre, I mean, it's been said in the media a lot, and a lot of people, I get the impression the general public don't understand necessarily the sort of financial workings of a pantomime and what it actually means for the theatre in terms of their yearly turnover. But very often, if a theatre produces their own pantomime, they get 100% of the income. If a theatre works in conjunction with a producer, obviously the producer's getting the majority of the income and the theatre's still getting a lot, but it can help that theatre run for many, many months after the pantomime's finished, the income that comes from a panto. And also for children going to a pantomime, people associate families going to panto, and it's often children's first experience of live theatre, and introducing them to the magic of that medium. And then it's so important that we keep local theatres going. I mean, it's so sad to hear of ones that are struggling, and obviously places with staff on furlough at the moment, and they don't know if they're going to be able to come back, how they're going to manage coming back. But we've seen already with things that have been put in place, like the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, people want to go back to restaurants, and they're trialling sporting events and stuff like that, letting small people, numbers of people in, and people want to go back to them. And from the small number of shows that have been able to operate with social distancing, you can see there is definitely the demand for it. People will support it. So as soon as it is possible, any relaxing of restrictions, I would just urge people to really, more than ever, support it. And probably many pantos have been postponed till next year. If it comes back in the spring, I urge people to get their kids to see shows that are aimed at kids, to just go as much as they can. And because certainly this part of the industry really does need everybody's support in the coming months, you know.
You should have done that as your 60-second.
Yes.
Just talk about theatre. That's it. Easy for all of us. that would have been easy. That's a cop out. Keith, what about you?
Well, same thing. I mean, local theatres are so important. I did the opening night at the Orchard Theatre in Dartford, my hometown, over 30 years ago now. And it's gone from strength to strength, not because I did the opening night. It was an amazing opening night, actually. We had John Inman, Susan Morn, Kent Opera, all sorts of different things on. Bernie Winters and Schnorbitz were there. It was an incredible night. And that theatre's done so well over the years, and it's so sad now to see it standing there doing nothing at the moment. And it's sad to see any theatre. And when I think of Scarborough, a place I worked so many summer seasons and so on, the Futurist Theatre's gone. Yeah. The Floral Hall went many years ago. I think the Opera House is now defunct. It's just unbelievable that all these theatres, even before this business, theatres were losing out. So we've got to try to bring them back somehow. And if testing is what it's all about, I mean, if you can get an audience in and test everyone for COVID-19 and get results very quickly so that you know your whole audience are free of the virus, then that's how you do it. But they can't at the moment do that kind of testing, unfortunately. It's so important, local theatre. It really is.
Yeah. Damo, you were going to say something before.
Well, I was just, it's all intertwined really, because if local theatre goes, or any theatre goes, then the performers also go, because there's not venues for you to perform in. And us all as entertainers, and certainly comedy entertainers, we don't do it just for the money, or, you know, because it's a job. We do it because we love entertaining. So,
oh yes, we
know it. Oh yes. So if people can't go and watch local theatre and it's not there, like say, you know, theatres that have closed, and they've then got to travel, and then some people won't want to travel. They'll want to go to their local theatre, and if that's disappeared, then you're losing out on those shows that take people away for 2 hours into, you know, the world that they're watching, be it panto, you're laughing, or be it a play. You know, if all that goes, then it's just a bit of relief for people to go to a theatre and have a laugh for an evening, and it makes their whole week something to look forward to, something to remember. So, you know, you've got to support your theatre, or any theatre certainly in need of money at the moment, because we're all in the same boat. You know, you just don't know what's going on, and we want theatre to be there at the end of it, and we want to be in the theatres performing to people at the end of it.
Yeah.
And Brian, you get the last word, my friend.
That's very kind. What we're on about. But yes, the thing was, when we started in the business, Jim and I mean, there were 3 theatres in Rotherham. Yeah. We'd seen our dad as young lads being the comedian, he'd been Buttons at the Empire, which no one would know what the hell that was now. We topped the bill at the Regent in 1956, and it's been all downhill since. But the business was tremendous when we first started. but it then started. Television came in, and that they said that'll do it. That'll drop everybody. And we said no, it won't, thinking it wouldn't. And it didn't for a while. Although then they started getting strippers, which we worked with. Two just showing the top for 10 bob in those days. and one girl, Alma, who was very shy and had to wear glasses. So she had the glasses off, and she had a bit of everything. She showed everything, sitting down. And of course they had to shave. I'm not talking about the beard, but sorry about this. The kids
everyone.
in bed now. They're in bed now. Yeah, but they had to shave. And of course, Alma was so shy. You would never know that she was. She went and said, "I'm a stripper. I'll take everything off." I thought, no. And we had another girl when we were working with Larry Grayson at Pavilion in Liverpool. We had a stripper, and she did this full strip, a coloured girl, and we were on the side. He said, "Oh, Brian, come and watch this." She's hilarious. And she finished her act, or she thought she had, and she was only wearing a piece of tape on where, and that was all, nothing else. Dancing around like a good one. So she kind of finished folding, and they said, "There we are." And they closed the taps. She ripped this stuff off, covering her indignities. They said, "One more." So she had to just, and that was it. You think, dear, oh dear. So that was what the business. That's what the business became in 1956, 57. So I mean, it's been quite a while. So there we are. I thought I'd finish the show with a flourish. Yes, support your local theatre. No, the theatre has always been brilliant. But there we are.
On that bombshell, we are going to leave it there. Massive thank you to Damian, to Brian, to Keith, and to Ben for tonight. I've never laughed so hard in a while. We're back.
Thank you to you, Robert, for setting this up, and guys, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I must admit, and to see you two lads, great.
It's fantastic to see you both as well.
Yeah,
great comics.
Thank you.
We're gonna stay on the line for a little bit and do our catch up. But thank you so much to everyone. I will see you next week for episode 19. But until then, from Keith, from Ben, from Damian, and from Brian, we'll see you later. Ta-ra!
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
See you later.